Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. This one is a double government employee event, and what you should know is if you get the attention of a government employee and make them angry, they will make your life a living hell. Sorry, this is a long one. The setup is that I was working for a local county government in the permitting department that handled drainage and floodplain enforcement back in 2023. I received a complaint from a homeowner, Marcus, a really decent guy, who lived next door to a house that was part of an incorporated village. Trevor, definitely not a decent guy. Marcus lived in an unincorporated portion of the county, and hence the call to me as an agent of the county. I drove out to the site to investigate and discovered some interesting facts. The permitting agent for the village allowed Trevor to fill his lot affecting the drainage, which caused Marcus's lot to flood every time there was anything more than light rain. "It's gotten so bad I can't even use my backyard after a normal shower," Marcus explained, pointing to the soggy grass. "The water just sits there for days." Marcus indicated that there was some tension between him and Trevor, and part of the issue was that Marcus and his partner were a gay couple. This ran up a red flag for me, but in trying to be impartial, I took the information and some photos for the file and indicated that I would contact the village to find a resolution. "I appreciate you coming out," Marcus said. "We've tried talking to them directly, but it just makes things worse." I wrote a letter and then called the village inspector, Randy, to discuss. I was told by Randy that the village could do as it pleased and that I could do nothing to stop Trevor from doing as he pleased as it was approved by the village. "Look, we handle our own permits here," Randy said sharply over the phone. "The county doesn't need to stick its nose in our business. Besides, there's always a complaint from those type of people just trying to cause trouble." There was then a comment about those type of people, the gay couple, making complaints just to cause trouble. I was now on the case, and it was time to make sure everything done on the incorporated lot was 100% legal. At this point, the game certainly was now on, because if there is one thing that grinds my gears, it is bullying. I went back out and spoke to Marcus to let him know what I was up to and also that I was not going to let this slide. "I heard what Randy said to you," I told Marcus, "and I want you to know that's not acceptable. I'm going to look into this situation more thoroughly." "Thank you," Marcus replied with visible relief. "We just want to be treated fairly." I then started investigating the elevations on the two lots and what fill had been placed on Trevor's lot. Trevor came out and started getting belligerent about my presence and ongoing investigation. "What the hell do you think you're doing on my property?" Trevor shouted, marching across his yard. "You have no authority here. This is village land." He incorrectly stated that I did not have jurisdiction over his lot and that he would be calling the police. I patiently listened and then pulled out my two-way radio and requested that the home base dispatch both a village and a county police unit to the location. "Feel free to call whoever you want," I said calmly. "I've just requested both departments send someone over. While we wait, I should inform you that since there's a regulatory floodplain on your lot, I do in fact have jurisdiction, and I will be exercising my right to determine the impact of your fill activities upon that floodplain." Both of the police units showed up, and I let them know what was going on. They were both appropriately agitated to have to waste their time and let Trevor know that I was within my authority to proceed with the investigation. "Sir, the county agent has jurisdiction in floodplain matters regardless of municipal boundaries," the village officer explained to Trevor. "It's federal law." A little while later, while I was measuring things, Randy showed up. He started berating me about harassing the village resident and threatening to call my boss and file a complaint. "This is completely unacceptable," Randy yelled. "You're overstepping your bounds. I'm going to have your job for this." I invited him to do so, quoting which parts of the code he should indicate I was violating. I was using marking paint to show the limits of the floodplain for the photos for the file, and what do you know, Randy's shoe got painted when he tried to stop me. Obviously, he was even more angry, as was Trevor, due to very bright orange paint in the grass in his yard. "Are you kidding me? You just ruined my new shoes," Randy bellowed. I pointed out I had done the same on the neighboring lots, but they just kept complaining. "It's actually marking chalk," I explained. "It comes off pretty easily with water. I've marked the same lines on all affected properties." Interestingly, I found two really wrong things on Trevor's lot. One, there was fill placed in the floodplain, and two, a garden shed was built on the fill and partially within the floodplain. Both are a big no-no and are actually against federal law, so the course of action had two parts. One, make Trevor remove the fill and shed from the floodplain, and two, let Marcus place fill in his lot outside of the floodplain to counteract the fill remaining in Trevor's lot outside of the floodplain. Based on my findings, I told Marcus, I think we have a solution here. Also, it would be a good idea to run a field tile on your side to drain the water that will inevitably pond up between the two lots when it rains. That sounds reasonable, Marcus nodded. How soon can we start? Predictably, Trevor and Randy got super angry when I sent the letter out that there were violations that either had to be corrected, remove, fill, and shed, or apply for a revision of the floodplain with the Army Corps of Engineers. Good luck with that. This then led to a meeting at the county office with Trevor, Randy, my supervisor Jennifer, and myself. Quickly, things went to 11 and there was yelling by Randy about abuse of power. "This is nothing but targeted harassment," Randy shouted, slamming his hand on the conference table. "Your employee is clearly biased and using his position to push a personal agenda." The department head, Diana, came into the conference room and told them both they were wrong and that they should leave peacefully and comply or face the consequences. Fines. "Gentlemen," Diana said firmly, "I've reviewed the case and our findings are correct. You have two options: comply with the order or face daily fines of $1,000. The choice is yours, but I suggest you make it quickly." The best part was that Trevor had to apply for a permit, and guess who was the one to review and approve it? That's right, yours truly. Now, I was following the letter of the law, but you have to know that poor government workers are underpaid and overworked. Strangely, the permit for Marcus was almost immediately approved, while Trevor had to have a very thorough review to ensure it was correct. "I don't understand why this is taking so long," Trevor complained during his third visit to the office. "My neighbor's permit was approved in days." "Well, there are certain technical aspects of your application that need careful review," I explained with a perfectly neutral expression. "We want to make sure everything is exactly right. You could make a case I was abusing my power, but I can assure you that the timing for Trevor's review was well within acceptable limits. Also, how could I be held to account that they misfiled 3 times before they finally got it right? Generally, if you behaved like a civil human and came to the office, we would help you get things done properly so the permit would go through the first time, but Trevor decided he could do it all on his own, so it took him 3 tries. Had he come to the office, I would have given him the same service as others, but he decided to take the hard route, and therefore I didn't give a single inch when it came to the submission being perfectly correct. "You're missing Section 4B, I would say, returning his paperwork, and the site plan needs to show the exact elevation points at 2-foot intervals." "But that wasn't mentioned in the instructions," he'd protest. "It's in paragraph 6 of the supplemental guidelines," I'd reply calmly. "I'd be happy to show you where to find those on our website." Ultimately, the situation was resolved, but it took a lot more effort than it should have. By early 2024, Marcus had properly graded his yard and installed drainage, while Trevor had to move his shed and restore the floodplain area. The water flow problems were fixed, and both properties were now in compliance with all regulations. Moral of the story: don't be an entitled homophobic jerk. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived on my ranch long enough to watch 3 summers of grasshoppers and 2 winter blizzards take down more fence than any person has ever managed. I run cattle and a few horses on 700 acres that my dad fenced with his own hands. The land is recorded in my name, taxes paid, water rights intact, and the boundaries are not complicated. The legal description is meets and bounds tied to section corners. My deed references township and range and a survey my father commissioned in the late 90s when he bought the southern parcel. The fences have been in the same place since. Then a developer bought the hayfield to the east and built a planned neighborhood. They graded, paved, put in a pool, and sold the place with glossy mailers showing sunsets and mountains. I figured I'd get some dog walkers near the fence and a few lost kids. I didn't expect a homeowners association to decide my land was their open space. The first sign I saw was small. It was screwed to a T-post near my north fence line, where the old Jeep trail crosses the draw. White aluminum, black letters. Private HOA land, members only. The next day there were 6 more. By the end of the week, there were close to 50 signs spread around my pastures and creek crossings. Not just on the fence line, but a good 200 feet inside in some spots. They didn't respect drainages or my gates. They stuck them next to my stock tanks like they were fixtures. It wasn't just signs. People showed up. Joggers in neon outfits, teenagers on dirt bikes, a guy walking 3 off-leash dogs that scattered my heifers. One woman with a stroller saw me and told me she was using the community greenbelt, like I was some groundskeeper. The best one was a group in matching t-shirts, picking up trash and taking selfies like they were saving the planet while standing on my hay meadow. I went to the HOA office, which is really just a room off the pool with a bulletin board and a coffee pod machine. I asked to speak to whoever was in charge. A board member met me out front wearing a polo with the HOA logo. Me. You put signs on my ranch. Board. We posted boundaries for the community greenbelt. Me. Your greenbelt ends where your plat ends. My ranch isn't on it. Take the signs down. Board. We annexed the corridor to the river. It's on our map. Me. You can draw a map of the moon if you want. You can't annex my land. Board. The developer presented it as open space. This community was built around access to nature. Me. Nature is my pasture. You can't give what you don't own. He shrugged like it was a customer complaint. A week later, the HOA newsletter went out with a map showing HOA open space and trails. They shaded a big swath of my northern and western pastures green, labeled it Community Access. The newsletter told residents to enjoy the private HOA land. They claimed they had agreements with adjacent landowners. I hadn't signed anything. They also told folks to report hostile ranchers to the property manager. I tried to keep it simple. I posted bright no trespassing signs on my fence and a few inside the property to replace theirs. I closed the 2 old gates near the creek that my dad used when he ran the ditch. I put a lock on the one near the old corrals. I went to the sheriff's office and asked what I needed to do to stop people from coming onto my land. The deputy told me to document and call when it happened. He said they would respond. Then he asked me about the HOA signs. I told him they were bogus. He said it would help if I had proof. He wasn't wrong. People with a stroller and a dog look harmless. People with an HOA pin on their shirt look official to a deputy who doesn't know the parcels. So I set up trail cameras at the gates and where the Jeep trail meets my interior pasture road. I saved every photo and video. Joggers, kids on ATVs, HOA landscapers in a truck unloading more signs. I also called a surveyor to come out and reflag the corners. He set stakes at the north and west corners with rebar and orange caps. He staked out the line where the developer stopped grading and my original fence starts. He gave me a stamped map tied to the county's GIS. The next day, the orange caps were gone. Someone pulled them and tossed them into the creek. I found tire marks and boot prints. My own signs were loose screwed to the fence where someone had tried to pry them off, and the HOA had added bigger signs with their logo, members only, private HOA land, violators will be prosecuted. I sent a letter to the HOA through certified mail. It said to remove their signs in 10 days, stay off my property, and stop telling people my land was theirs. I attached a copy of my deed, the county plat showing the subdivision boundaries, and the surveyor's map with his stamp. I told them that if they didn't comply, I would take legal action. They sent back 2 things. One was a notice of violation saying my unauthorized signs and locked gate blocked community access. The other was a bill for assessments and fines for not complying with HOA rules. I am not an HOA member. My parcel number is not in their CCRs. I didn't sign their documents. The bill was a joke, but the notice of violation had a line at the bottom that said they could record a lien. That part wasn't funny. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from a loan officer who manages my operating line asking what was up with a cloud on title. The HOA had recorded a memorandum of access saying they had rights to a corridor across my parcel. The thing was made up. It wasn't signed by me. It referenced an exhibit that didn't exist. It still sat in the county records like it was real, and that was enough to make my bank nervous. That was the moment I hired an attorney. I took him the deed, the maps, the survey, the photos, the shady memo, and the HOA newsletter. I told him I wanted it stopped. He looked over the stack and told me we would file for a temporary restraining order to stop them from posting signs and telling people to use my land. He also laid out the claims we had: trespass, for entering and placing signs on my property; conversion, for removing my survey stakes and my signs; slander of title, for recording that memo and telling the world they had rights on my land; nuisance, for interfering with my use and scaring cattle; tortious interference, for messing with my loan; declaratory judgment, to have the court say in plain words that the HOA has no rights on my land; quiet title, to clear that fake memo and put a court order on the record. We also asked for a preliminary and later permanent injunction to stop them from doing it again. We sent a demand letter first. It gave them 72 hours to withdraw the memo, remove the signs, send out a correction to your residents, and stop trespassing. We gave them a copy of the lawsuit already drafted to show we were not bluffing. We copied their property manager, the board, and the developer. They didn't just ignore it, they doubled down. The property manager sent a mass email to residents saying, "The HOA controls access to the adjoining greenbelt and will enforce its rules." They reminded people to report me to the HOA. They boasted that public safety was involved. They had a board meeting where they told people on camera that they had secured access to the creek on my land for fishing and dog walking. We filed suit the next morning in district court. We asked for a TRO on an emergency basis. The judge set a hearing for that afternoon. I went with my lawyer, the surveyor, and a banker who was not thrilled with the cloud on title. The HOA sent their attorney and the board president. The judge asked simple questions. He wanted to know where the subdivision ended on the recorded plat. He wanted to know what the deed to my land said. He wanted to know what exactly the HOA thought gave them any right to step foot on my property. They pointed to a concept plan from the developer that showed green shading, and they pointed to a line on a brochure that talked about miles of trails. The judge asked where in the county clerk's records there was any easement recorded by me. They didn't have one. The judge granted the TRO. He ordered the HOA to remove any of their signs on my property within 24 hours to stop directing residents onto my land and to stop interfering with my fences and gates. He also told them to record a release of their memo by noon the next day. He warned them that if they didn't comply, he would hold them in contempt and sanction them. We drove straight to the property. The HOA landscaper crew was there with a trailer, hauling out signs. One guy told me they were just doing what they were told and asked me not to yell at him. I told him I wasn't going to yell at him. I wanted the signs gone. He pointed to a stack in the trailer. There had to be 100. I told him to keep going and to get the ones by the pond. I wish the story ended there, but you don't get a story if people act right twice in a row. 2 weeks later, I caught a group from the HOA reinstalling signs near the creek road at dusk. Trail camera got their faces and the truck plate. A jogger stepped off a curb at the trailhead and told me the board had announced that the court only stopped them temporarily and they were reasserting their control. I didn't argue with her. I sent the video to my attorney. We filed a motion for contempt. The judge set a hearing and told the HOA to bring whoever authorized the new signs. They blamed a volunteer. The judge didn't care. He fined the HOA $500 a day until every sign was out, ordered a compliance plan, and told them to send a letter to every resident within 48 hours stating that my land was private, that the HOA had no rights on it, and that residents who crossed the fence or gate would be trespassing. He told the sheriff to enforce the order if needed. That letter made it to my mailbox like any junk mail. It also made it to the neighborhood Facebook page. Comments showed a split. Some folks were mad at the HOA for lying, some were mad at me for not wanting to share. Plenty just wanted to walk their dogs without getting yelled at by anybody. Once the easy stuff was in place, we started discovery. We asked for board minutes, emails, text messages, the contract with the property manager, developer communications, marketing materials, and anything about access, open space, easements, and my parcel. We also subpoenaed the developer for their documents. What came back made my jaw clench. The developer's marketing team had put my creek on their brochure. They took photos from my side of the fence during construction and labeled it Planned Greenbelt. An early draft of the HOA budget had a line for open space maintenance that included trash pickup along my creek. The board discussed creating trailheads at the 2 old gates I had locked. Their property manager told them in an email, "We do not have recorded access. We should negotiate with the ranch owner." The developer answered, "We'll deal with it after sales." The board president wrote, "Let's get signs up first and make it feel like ours." They had minutes from a board meeting where a lawyer they hired early on told them they had no rights and that if they wanted a trail, they needed to buy an easement. They didn't budget for an easement. They counted on me being quiet or not hiring an attorney. There was another piece that mattered. While all this was happening, we had 2 calves get out through the north gate after someone left it unlatched. We found one alive and one dead in the ditch, tangled in wire. My vet bill and the loss weren't world-ending, but they were real. We included that in our damages and tied it to all the people they sent onto my property. We also tied a dip in my pasture grass near the creek to dog traffic and soil compaction. None of those were big numbers alone. Together, they painted a picture of what this kind of interference looks like in real life. The HOA offered to settle by paying me a token amount and leaving the trail open for residents only if they promised to be respectful. They wanted me to grant them a revocable license. I said no. They countered with a small payment and a fence upgrade if I allowed certain hours. I said no again. I told them if they wanted access, we were talking about market value for an easement, proper fencing, gates, maintenance agreements, insurance, and the right to close it during calving or fire. They didn't want to pay. We pushed forward to trial. It wasn't flashy. There were no outbursts. The judge listened and looked through binders of documents. My surveyor testified how he set the corner pins and where the line is. The county planner testified that the subdivision plat did not include my land and that there were no recorded common areas on my parcel. The county clerk testified that there was no recorded easement from me to the HOA. My banker explained how the memorandum they recorded stopped my operating line and what that did to me. We had neighbors from the older part of the county testify to seeing HOA members pull stakes and install signs inside my fence. The HOA tried to say it was all a misunderstanding. They said the developer led them to believe there would be access. They said some volunteer overreached. They said the memo was just a placeholder. They said the signs were for safety. They implied I was hostile. They showed photos of me standing by my gate with my arms crossed. They tried to play the community good angle. Then my attorney put their emails on the screen where they talked about make it feel like ours, and the minutes where their early lawyer told them no rights, and the property manager's note about we do not have recorded access. That took the air out of their misunderstanding story. The judge asked the board president why he recorded a memo about access he didn't have. He didn't have a real answer. The court issued a detailed written order that did more than stop them. It cleaned up the mess. The judge declared that the HOA had no rights to my land. He found that they trespassed by posting signs and walking on my property. He found that they slandered my title by recording that memo. He found that their actions caused me real damages, including the delay on my loan and the loss of the calf. He also found their conduct willful after they were warned. He awarded me damages for the cost to have the survey done twice, the cost to repair fence and replace survey stakes, the vet bill and the calf loss, the cost to reseed compacted areas by the creek, the extra interest and fees from the delay on my operating line. He awarded attorneys' fees and costs under the slander of title statute because we proved malice or reckless disregard. He ordered the HOA to record a release of their memo and to file the court's order with the county so any title search would see it. He issued a permanent injunction prohibiting the HOA, its agents, and its residents from entering my land without my express permission, except for lawful public officials on duty. He required the HOA to send certified letters to every member to email and to publish in their newsletter a correction stating that my land is private, that there is no HOA access, and that trespassers will be subject to prosecution. He made them pay for the county to install official no public access signs at the ends of the public streets that dead end at my fence. He also sanctioned the HOA for violating the TRO. He fined them and ordered the board president to complete community service unrelated to my property. The judge referred the matter of the pulled survey stakes to the district attorney. I don't know if anything came of that. I know the board president started running more quietly after that hearing. The HOA insurance carrier took over at that point. They paid the judgment, the fees, and the sanctions. Then they sent a notice to the HOA that their premiums were going up. I heard through the grapevine that the board had to levy a special assessment just to cover the deductible and the increase. That didn't make me happy. I don't want my neighbors soaked. But I also didn't start this. After it was over, I did something on my own terms. There is an old 2-track road that runs along my western fence to the county line. It's been used by hunters to reach state land since before I was born. It was never recorded. In the fight with the HOA, it got wrapped up in the mess and people got confused. I met with the county, the state land office, and my attorney. We drafted a real recorded public access easement for that 2-track. I kept the right to close it during high fire danger and calving. The county agreed to put in a small gravel parking area on their side and to install signs and a cattle guard so gates don't get left open. They also agreed to patrol during hunting season. I did it that way because I want to be a good neighbor, but I won't be bullied. There is a right way to do things. You record a document, you pay for what you use, you take care of what you touch. You don't show up one day with a stack of signs and pretend someone else's field belongs to you. It's been a year since the final order. The signs they paid for at the end of the street say, no access to private ranch, no trespassing. The HOA newsletter talks about pool hours and landscaping tips now. I still get the occasional dog that slips under the fence, but the flow of joggers stopped. The dirt bikes moved back to wherever they came from. The sheriff knows where the line is because he's seen the order. The bank released the hold on my line and apologized for the delay. My calves stayed where they belonged last spring. I still find the random old sign in a washout after a storm and toss it in a pile. I keep the court's order and the survey in a folder in my pickup. If someone looks confused at the fence and calls out, I explain it in plain English. This land is private, the HOA never owned it, and the court made that plain. Most folks nod, apologize, and turn around. A few grumble. None of them have a stack of signs anymore. A neighbor from the new subdivision stopped me at the feed store last month. He told me he moved in after all the dust settled. He said he got the correction letter and went to a board meeting where people asked the old board why they lied. The board president didn't run again. A new board got elected and their first order of business was stay in our lane. They repealed a weird rule about backyard swing sets and stopped sending out notices about garage paint color. He said the whole thing ended up making the place calmer. I didn't set out to fix their HOA, I set out to take back my fence lines. I did that in court, because that's where you take down an army of signs you didn't ask for. If anyone in that neighborhood hears about a rancher with a chip on his shoulder, that's fine. I'll wear it. I also know that if the board had come to me at the start and asked for a real trail and offered to pay for an easement and a fence, I might have said yes. In my county, land records are simple. You go to the clerk, you look up the grantor and grantee index, you read what's recorded, you don't print a glossy map and think it changes the law. The judge didn't give me anything I didn't already have. He wrote down what was already true. The land is mine, and an HOA can't vote itself across my fence. If you ever find yourself in a fight like this, don't get cute and cut down signs with a saw you borrowed from your cousin. Don't throw them in a ditch. Don't get in a screaming match with a volunteer at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Call a surveyor. Get your deed. Talk to the clerk. Take photos. Hire a lawyer who knows property law. Ask for a TRO. Keep everything. Show the judge. Make them put their story under oath. If the facts are on your side, the law will be too. I didn't worry about winning style points. I worried about calves, fences, and loan payments. The court order has my legal description in it. It mentions my parcel number and the full metes and bounds. It will sit in the records for anyone to see long after I'm gone. If someone tries this again in 20 years, the clerk will hand them a copy of the order and tell them not to waste the judge's time. The last private HOA land sign I found was wedged under a willow after spring runoff. I pulled it out and set it by the barn. I keep it there to remind me what a piece of aluminum and a bad idea can turn into. It looks harmless. It wasn't. It took months, court dates, and money to undo. But it's done. I took those signs down the right way. In court. And they haven't been back. Anyway, thank you for watching.